So this happened about 10 years ago in Manitou Springs, Colorado. I was living in a friend's trailer on her couch, and there was very limited space, and I was looking for a place of my own. I ran into this guy that lived a few trailers down from her, and he was telling me that he was looking out to rent part of his trailer, so I went over to take a look. This guy seemed really off, in a creepy sort of way, but at the time, I was really desperate to give my friend her living room couch back and get out of there, so I was willing to go pretty much anywhere. When I went over there, he told me that he'd rent out a small space inside of this ridiculously small trailer, or he was willing to rent out a small cubby that he had underneath his trailer that he also showed to me. It looked like to be about 10 by 10 crawl space under his trailer. This alone should have been the red flag that made me turn him down flat, but like I said, I was pretty desperate, and that red flag was one of many to come. So I hesitantly and very reluctantly agreed to rent this small space inside and move my stuff over that night. Almost immediately, he started going on about a curfew I'd have to abide by if I was to live there, and a bunch of other nonsense that I wasn't about to sit and listen to, so I left. When I came back, I found him sprawled out on his front porch, mumbling about how he'd just taken a bunch of pills and holding a half-empty bottle of booze in his hand. I had to step over him to get in the door as he began screaming about how I hadn't minded his warning about my new curfew. At this point, I flat out told him that if I was going to be paying him money to stay there, I would be coming and going as I pleased, since I'm an adult, not a child, and certainly not his child. To this, he reacted by having quite the outburst of rage, at which point I was sure that this was not going to work. He then gets up and starts flinging my stuff out into the street, and this is all happening at like 2 in the morning. So I gather what belongings are still left in his house and take them outside with me while I continue to gather what he's already thrown out and go begging my friend to let me come back into her trailer. And she let me, but that's not where this bizarre story ends. A few days after this happens, I see a young girl at his house and they're both getting drunk, and I didn't think much of it. But about a week after that, once I had found another place to stay, my friend that lived in that trailer park called me, panicking, asking if I was okay. After I got her to calm down some and assured her that I was fine, I asked her what made her even ask to begin with. She tells me that they had just pulled a human body from the little cubby under that guy's trailer that had been there for several days. She told me that the guy that lived there had been arrested for trying to rob a convenience store with a machete, and the girl's body he had stashed under his trailer had begun to smell, so the landlord called the police. The young girl I had seen him drinking with just a few days beforehand was found wrapped in a quilt under his trailer. All that was running through my mind as she was telling me all of this was that would have been me had I not left when I did. I didn't step foot in that trailer park again. Even going anywhere near it gave me the creeps so bad I couldn't stand the thought of going anywhere close for years afterwards. And as badly as I felt for that young girl, I was still very thankful that I walked away from there with my life. Everything started with me and a couple of my buddies hanging out at my place. For the sake of this story, I will name my two friends Michael and Lucas. Basically, everyone got pretty much wasted from drinking too much bourbon that Michael had brought with him. It was around 2 a.m. when Lucas, still a bit drunk, suggested we go and explore the abandoned insane asylum. For the context, we will all live together in around the same small town. This is not much going on there, but when you drive about 15 miles in empty back roads, you would come across the old mental hospital, which had been vegetating ever since it was abandoned in the 1960s due to unknown reasons. Now back to the story. Since there was really nothing better to do, we all agreed to the 30-minute drive. We grabbed our backpacks, some water, 3 flashlights, and a big hunting knife for protection. Lucas also brought a couple of graffiti cans for obvious reasons. Yeah, he was into that stuff at the time. The drive was relatively unspectacular, with the exception that Michael almost ran over a rattlesnake laying in the middle of the road. When we arrived, the sight of this huge asylum just standing there for all those years made me feel a little uneasy. But my doubts quickly evaporated as Michael and Lucas were already going around the place looking for an entrance. We finally found a window that was not completely boarded up with beams and then crawled headfirst through the small opening. I quickly got on my feet and let my eyes get adjusted to the darkness that completely surrounded us. We powered up our flashlights and began wandering through the corridors with rooms on other sides. The walls were pretty much all covered in graffiti, so Lucas suggested that we should look out for a basement entrance with the intention of finding a free spot for his graffiti. After a 30-minute search, we finally found the basement entrance. The stairs were rusty and creaked with every step. The whole basement smelled horrible. Lucas quickly disappeared down a long hallway with rooms on either side, and Michael and I were keeping pace up behind him. As we wandered off further into the dark hallway, which our cheap flashlights only poorly lit up, the terrible smell grew worse. I can only describe it as a mixture of vomit and rotten eggs. What struck me as odd was that all the walls were pretty much clean, unlike the site that we had made at the first floor. It almost seemed like nobody had ever made it all the way to explore the basement level. Everything was going relatively smoothly up until the point when Lucas started making so much noise by shaking his graffiti cans in order to prepare them for his act of vandalism. So, he started spray painting one of the nearby walls. Michael and I just watched him do his thing. When he finally finished his piece, the smell of aerosol in the air almost drowned out the horrible stink that was still in the air. As we made our way down the hallway, I could tell that the smell came from a small room further down to the left of us. At this point, we were all pretty much freaking out, unsure of what we would find in that room. I had the hunting knife tight in my hands as I approached the room and shined my flashlight inside. The light beam hit, and I kid you not, a circle of burnt-out candles appeared. In the center of the candles was a dark object hanging from the ceiling. At this point, I had to vomit because of the smell coming from this room. Michael was the bravest one of us as he stumbled into this room grabbing a metal bar from the pile of junk next to him, poking the object with it. As right then we realized the huge amount of dark brownish stains on the floor under that thing. We all quickly sobered up due to the situation as we heard several voices and fast-approaching footsteps from across the other hallway. I never ran that fast in my entire life. It's really amazing what adrenaline can affect. We finally reached the set of stairs and sprinted through the floor. As we finally reached the window that we had entered from, Michael also vomited onto the floor. Lucas then realized that he had left his backpack full of his stuff in the basement, as he had not enough time to pick it up or realize that he left it. We sprinted out front and got into my car and just hightailed it out of there. As much as I know we only have suggestions of what we saw in that basement, maybe there was some kind of ritual taking place there, or we just stumbled across some sort of murder scene. We haven't told anyone this story. In fact, Lucas told me that he had not had a good night of sleep since that day, knowing he left his wallet in the backpack there, and keeping all his personal information, including his home address, stuck in that asylum. So as you know, girls, dating can be super fun, but super risky. I'm sure you all have your guards up when meeting guys for the first time, especially when it comes to dating apps. And after one chance encounter with a guy I met on Tinder, I keep a double guard up these days, and here's why. I happened across the profile of a guy claiming to be a male model. The pictures were super hot. The guy looked like he was a Viking or something. Tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, a real-life Disney prince. Not just that, but he was incredibly charming, had all the right answers to all of my questions, and by the end of our first day chatting, I was so ready to meet him. So we arranged a little meet, a little cute thing at a local eatery, a Korean BBQ place that I've been dying to go to. Of course, he'd promised to pay for everything, and I'm not a freeloader, but let's just say that I like the gentlemanly touch. He was late. Now, I know that might seem irritating, but the anticipation of waiting for the guy was intoxicating. I didn't quite feel worthy of him, and being made to wait only compounded the feeling. By the time 5 minutes after our proposed meeting time had passed, I had serious butterflies in my stomach. I never anticipated what would come next, not in my wildest dreams, and when it did, I felt sick to my stomach. I look up from my phone to see someone recording me on their own device. This guy was no Viking. He was short, overweight, unshaven, and he looked like he hadn't bathed in weeks. I asked him what he thought he was doing, filming me like that, and his response pretty much knocked the wind out of me. This wasn't exactly what was said, but just what I can recall from memory. You see? You see how unfair this is? You can pick up any guy you want, but I have to lie just to get you to meet me. That's disgusting. You should have been giving a guy like me a chance. You honestly think you deserve a male model? You're not even that hot. He's saying this so loud that the entire restaurant is looking around at us, and I can feel all eyes staring at me, at us. It reminded me of the middle school play I had to perform in, the same one that had me running off a stage and puking in the girls' bathroom because I just couldn't handle the pressure, the gross amounts of attention. It was kind of weird what happened next. I mean, maybe I'd just grown up a whole lot. Maybe it was the fight-or-flight instinct that had me settling squarely on fight. But the words came out of me before I could even really consider them. I told him what he was doing was not okay, that lying was not the way to get a woman, and that he had a lot of maturing and growing to do before he could be in any decent place to pursue getting a girlfriend. I told him what he did was unfair, not what I was doing, and that he should be ashamed of himself. And I totally turned it around. I was actually shaking with adrenaline, beaming with pride as someone in the back of the restaurant shouted something like, "You tell him, girl." I gathered up my purse, got up from my seat, and walked past the guy without giving him a second look. Now, maybe this isn't as scary as a story to you guys as the obsessive stalker or the murderous incel, but for a few moments, it was the most terrifying experience of my life.